Hey everyone, this is Kalamalka from HotSShot.com. In this video, I'll be going over some key points about the Garden Terror. I want to highlight the different stages of the Garden Terror and how to decide what to do when you've taken control of it. There are two different ways to leverage the Terror to your team's advantage, and there are ways to determine which method you use based on the information you can get from the map. In the early game, you want to try to build your team as big of a lead as you possibly can. The best way to accomplish this is by navigating to structures on the map that are the safest distance away from the enemy team. This way, you're able to push extremely hard and hopefully build your team a significant experience advantage. I decided to go to the bottom lane because Jaina is topside and I just saw Raynor and Malfuri in mid. It's best to try to stay away from the enemy team during the early game so that you can deal as much damage to structures as possible. By focusing on towers, you'll gain more experience per Garden Terror, which will snowball your team into a larger lead. It's definitely smarter to place the seed in an area that affects the most amount of towers, such as on the inside of the gate, but in this scenario I wanted to get Anubarak out of his base, so I placed it on the outside. I take a lot of damage here, which is something you should try to avoid. Don't feel bad about leaving an area to try to get damage on towers elsewhere, just make sure you're communicating with your team if you plan on leaving them. Your basic strategy in the early game is to roam around as much as you can, placing seeds on every structure. If you're making the enemy team prioritize your seeds, then you're doing the right thing. By doing this, it will allow your team to press advantages elsewhere on the map. It's 12 minutes into the game and my team just scored our second terror. At this point you need to ask yourself these questions. Will my team benefit more from the split pressure or teamfight pressure? Because my team is successfully holding their own in the top lane, I decide it's a much better choice to try to split. Again, my goal while splitting is to try to create as much lane pressure as possible. By doing this, my team was able to get 2 forts and 3 towers in a single Garden Terror session. As I said earlier, placing the seed on the inside of gates is the most effective way to deal damage because it constricts 5 towers instead of just 3. Because my team is busy dealing with their terror, grouping right now isn't a good option because we won't get any structural damage done ourselves. Try getting your seeds into good positions, then running away with your E. Use Polymorph on cooldown and try to deal as much damage as you can. My third terror this game is really important because it's so late into the game. I find the biggest problem with people when they're using the Garden Terror is they don't transition their strategy when the game carries on into late times like this. They'll continue split pushing even though this is the time where you want to be grouping with your team trying to force fights and push down keeps. In the beginning, I head to the top side of the map to try to create some pressure because my team is on the bottom side. But as soon as I see the enemy team closing in on me on the top side, I decide it's much smarter to group with my team, so immediately I head to the bottom lane. When you're playing as the Garden Terror in team fighting scenarios, your basic goal is to soak as much damage as you can, be as disruptive to the enemy team as you can, and create as much pressure as you can. Your Q is a polymorph and a silence. It's really important to try to land it on as many people as you can, but more importantly on healers and damage dealers. The Garden Terror's polymorph also acts as an interruption ability, so if the other team has a Tychus that's using overkill, you can interrupt it and silence him. Or if they have a Lily and she's using her ultimate Jug of 1,000 Cups, you can also interrupt that. It can be really clutch in certain situations. If you're teamfighting with the Garden Terror and end up diving enemy structures, again make sure you're using your seed to constrict them so you're not taking extra damage. It's also very important as the Garden Terror to try to force the other team into positions that they don't want to be in. So just try to constantly push them back or push them into weird corners where you can polymorph a lot of people or where your team can use all of their AoE abilities and just deal a lot of significant damage. Well, that's it for the Garden Terror. Thank you all so much for watching, and if you thought this was informative, please support me by subscribing to my channel. I'll be constantly releasing content aimed at helping you all reach the goal of rank 1. See you soon, boys.